representing Los Angeles' 63rd district also. So many of our early legislative efforts centered around juvenile cases and limiting garnishment of wages. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make, and I'm sure Ms. Burke won't mind me saying this. I made an error of judgment, and it was even published in Steel Wheels. And I candidly will say that I expressed some disappointment at the time with Ms. Burke's appointment. And the reason for it was that we always hoped to see more railroad people on the Amtrak board. But candidly, having given it a lot more thought, I think I was quite wrong, and I'm quite happy to admit it. It's clear that 99% of Amtrak, in fact almost any railroad, is politics and not railroading. You can learn the railroading, but you've got to have a feel for the politics. We need a politician with smarts who can learn whatever needs to be done about the railroading. But Ms. Burke knows Los Angeles, she knows Sacramento, she knows Washington, D.C. She has the right stuff to get the job done. So please welcome Yvonne Burke to the podium.
Well, thank you very much, and certainly it's my pleasure to join you here. You have some interesting topics that I would certainly like to hear later. Unfortunately, I have to leave. In addition to some other things, I am a grandmother, and I babysit sometime. And today is one of those I do have some duties. But I really am very pleased to join you. James Smith has been very instrumental in making sure that I become familiar with your issues. And he has invited me here on other occasions so that I could better get acquainted with some of the real concerns that you have from RailPAC. And I want to explain it's true that I was never working for the railroad, but I do have a background in terms of my participation in government over the years. When I was in Congress, I served on what was then the Public Works Committee. And previous to the time that I had been on there, it had mostly been concerned with roads and highways. But I was there during the time that it changed and also became involved with rail. I have to say probably it was because a person, Bella Absent from New York, was really wanting to spend more money on the subways. And she was a very vocal, articulating person, member of that committee. Well, I was only on that committee for a short time, then I became a member of appropriations. And on appropriations, of course, I had to come into contact with all of those issues of transportation. And I guess that was my first interest, other than in public works, where I then also joined her in making sure that rail would be an important part of our federal responsibilities. I have been on the CTC, California Transportation Commission. I was appointed originally by the former governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then I was appointed by Governor Brown, and I still serve on CTC. I don't think it's a real conflict, because we do provide money for those state services, and we do also provide money. We also work with Lausanne, and my role on CTC is one that I try to complement. I'm not saying it's not always, and sometimes on one side or the other, but we also coordinate with Oregon and Washington, the state of Washington, and we meet with them because we recognize that you can't separate out California. You have to have working together on the issues of transportation as they relate to all three of those states. We meet together at least once every 2 or 3 years, the boards from Oregon and from the state of Washington. But how did I get on Amtrak? Well, I have to say that it was not my idea, even though I have been involved in transportation, and I was already serving on California Transportation Commission. But Art Leahy contacted me, and he said, we've had difficulty getting anyone from the West on Amtrak board. And we've tried, but we somehow can't ever seem to get a representative for years. And we have some big issues we really need to tackle. So after having lunch with him, I said, well, you know, I really had not planned on taking on any responsibilities in Washington, because going back and forth, I did that too many years. And to take that on again was not something that I was overly enthusiastic. But I said that I would do it. So he contacted Senator Feinstein. And Senator Feinstein, with the support of Senator Boxer, they were willing to contact the president to attempt to get me appointed. And you probably think, well, that's it. Well, it wasn't that easy. It took me a year to get through the Senate. My confirmation process was tedious. I had to meet with all the various senators. Both senators from Arkansas insisted that I meet with them because they were concerned about the schedule. And one time they said that they wanted to change the schedule. Of course, I met with the senators from New York who were very concerned about the tunnel. I met with a senator from Hawaii who was very concerned about getting a rail in Oahu. I guess that's why it took a year. But after meeting with all of those people, I ran into an issue that is presently now an issue. They couldn't appoint me because Mr. LaHood was leaving, and you have to have equal Republicans and Democrats. So my appointment was held up until they could appoint Chris Beal, who ostensibly was from Oklahoma, but actually lives in Connecticut. And he became the Republican who bounced with me, and that's how I got appointed. And we're going through that now. There is a person that the president has put forward at the request of Senator McConnell, who one of his former policy people, who now lives in Los Angeles, in San Gabriel Valley, and he has been appointed and is going through the process. In fact, I had suggested that he join me here, but his appointment has not gone through. He's still going through the Senate. And you'd think if he came from McConnell, he'd get through in a hurry, but that's not the way it is. He's still going through the Senate, and he, in turn, is holding up the reappointment of our chair, Tony Cosio. But hopefully that'll all be resolved at the end of this session, which should be coming up very soon. You know, I recognize that Amtrak workers are hardworking. They come from a long tradition. I always sort of kid them that it seems like it's, 3 or 4 generational. People come in and they are involved and they've been working, and they have family that came from a background and a commitment to rail and to passenger rail. In fact, our president, of course, Joe Boardman, is a person who has a long history of rail and involvement in rail, controversial as he may be. But our board, I really want to somehow get over to you, is dedicated to long distance. It may not always seem that way, but from what I observe, there is a commitment that they are going to do everything they can to maintain a national passenger rail system. And obviously I would be concerned with that, because if we don't have it here in the West, you can't just leave us out. You can't divide the nation. Now, I realize that some of my board members that I work with, they come from the Northeast Corridor. They all travel and they use those trains, and they utilize it, and as a result, they have somewhat of a commitment. They're always going to fight for it. But I have another friend, Tom Caper from Illinois, who the two of us are always saying, we're not up there in the Northeast Corridor. You're going to have to make sure that the rest of us have the same kind of service. But he, of course, has joined me of mayors. And we were the ones who have decided that we're going to work from that standpoint. You need to get the mayors throughout this nation to say that they are committed to provide national service. Here in California, we pass propositions to make sure that we fund rail, we fund transportation, and people will vote. But when you get out of California, in fact, there's some places in California that still don't vote for it. They're not willing to put money in it. But somehow we have to have all of those states along the route willing to make the same commitment that we make here in California. Because let me tell you, my view of Congress, I don't think you can necessarily depend upon Congress to continue to give the kind of funds or to start giving the funds to make sure that we have the kind of service that we need. I realize that on the Northeast Corridor, you have a lot of the rail is old. You have old tunnels, you have old bridges, but we need also upgrading of a lot of the rail and a lot of the tunnels and a lot of the infrastructure here in California and across the nation. There has never been the kind of commitment to building infrastructure. Now, is it going to happen now? I don't know. I'm really very concerned. You know that yesterday Congress passed for the first time a long-term transportation bill, a 5-year bill. And the last time, 2008, they passed something. But I believe I was just coming 16 years ago to the Metro Board, because I served on the Metro Board for 16 years. I believe it was at that time that they had the last long-term bill. They've had shorter-term bills, but this bill is 5 years. Now, how does it affect us? Well, for one thing, I am concerned about the fact that in that bill, it does say that the Northeast Corridor should not subsidize the rest of the system. That's a position that seems to have been taken by many of the members of Congress. What will happen with the new speaker, with Ryan? I don't know. He has not been speaking up in such a way to give us the impression that he is willing to stand behind a national system. But the bill does provide this. It authorizes $8 billion over those 5 years, and which is a little less than we've received in the last 5 years. But at least the authorization is there that can be included, that can be supplemented. But the authorization is there that hopefully we'll be able to tap into to make sure that we can get some of the upgrades in terms of locomotives, in terms of passenger cars, and also rail, and all of the things that we are so missing at this time. Now, one other thing I should share with you is that the board has been changed. The 10-year board, and that's as a result of a Supreme Court case. The 10-member board will no longer include the CEO president and the representative from the Department of Transportation, the secretary. They will be ex officio, and that is a result of a case that says that Amtrak is governmental as well as private, but since the Senate confirms that you can't have people who have not been confirmed by the Senate voting on measures, I'm not sure how that will impact us, but it's something that has come up in lawsuits and cases, and the board will have to be changed. In fact, we've already passed the kind of a charter in order to change the board. One of the things that I've been impressed with is our present Secretary of Transportation and the representative, Sarah Freeberg, who sits on the board for the Secretary. The Secretary never comes. I think the Secretary's come once since I've been here. So we did have a chance to meet the Secretary of Transportation. but his representatives, they are really there and supportive and dedicated, at least his secretary, to a national passenger system. Now, what's going to happen after 16? Who knows? But I want to say to you, as I sit there, they have been on Amtrak, some of those employees, making sure that they do some of the things that they should be doing, making sure that they address the issues. ADA, I think that has been a source of real embarrassment as far as Amtrak. We have to have the platforms. We have to have the stations. Those stations have to have facilities. And money is set aside by the Congress each year to carry out those responsibilities. But they've been behind in even identifying what should be done. Not only identifying what should be done, but monitoring to make sure that those ADA funds get to the place where they should be spent. We recently met with the organizations that are fighting for the disabled, and met with them to say that we will have an ongoing communication to meet the requirements, even though it's going to take a long time. But with some of the new platform, at least additions to some of the older trains with platforms, that we should be able to move forward and to provide a better situation in ADA. So I feel that we're moving. It's too late. I mean, it's very late. We will probably be sued. I suspect the Justice Department will sue us because it has taken too long to accomplish what we were supposed to do. But at this point, there is a commitment. Now, another thing that is in this new legislation is a new method that Amtrak will have to use for accounting. I have to admit, I haven't read the whole bill, but I've read a lot of it. And that's one of the things. The accounting system will have to be different. It'll have to be, and they can't just use the method that they have used with different, breaking up everything separately. They're going to have to look at assets, and it's a new approach as far as asset accounting. Amtrak has received an agreement from the Congress that they can have time to readjust their accounting methods to meet the requirements of this new legislation. So, but the reality is it's going to have to happen. Accounting is going to be one of the major things that will make a difference in terms of passenger rail. You know, sometimes I feel a lot of the administrative costs are allocated to state and to long distance, even though it's not proportionate in terms of the And this is very important also as far as state services. The accounting on state services, and I know that there's a lot of discussion back and forth on 208 and in terms of the how Amtrak will be reallocated for services rendered. You know, Amtrak does provide services to Metrolink as well as to state services. And I get plenty of complaints from people about the fact that Amtrak may charge one thing, but then when you charge it back the other way, they have a different amount. But all of those things, hopefully, will be addressed. You know, the reality is that we have to have partners if we're going to be able to maintain service to the West. And service to the West only comes about if you have a national system. And these partners are going to have to be all of those states who come up and complain, but at the same time, they're not out there fighting for us because they think it's just to get to their location. We are going to have them working with us, all of those members of Congress, if we're going to be able to establish and maintain a system that meets our needs. You know, California, of course, does well. The state services here they get large passenger numbers, the revenues are good, but that's not true in other places necessarily, and we are part of that whole system. So I would say to you, keep up the work. If this is so important that you're here, you know exactly technically what is necessary, you know where we're falling down. You can always, if there's an issue, contact me. I assure you, I will pass it on. Because I realize that we have to keep up with the rest of the world. There is nowhere else in the entire world. In China, Africa's getting ready to have a high-speed rail. We cannot compete if we don't have the same things that everyone else has. People come back, you know, when they're in Europe and they say, oh my gosh, they have great trains. They go to Japan, gee, the train runs on time, it's great trains. But they don't necessarily say, we're going to fight to make sure that we have that same service. Every American is entitled to it. And I hope that going forward, that somehow we can get a national commitment, and a national commitment to say, you can't have two different approaches and two kinds of service, because we are part of one nation, and it should be one modern, not just Casella having modern cars everywhere else in this nation, if we're going to be able to stand up and say, hurrah, we're doing something for the people. Thank you very much.
Many people who are interested in rail, and particularly in Amtrak, feel that the evidence that Amtrak doesn't want to become a national system or continue to be a national system is lack of commitment to equipment. That for all the talk, Amtrak is not moving forward on keeping equipment, and many of us feel that that is proof that when you get down to the politics, that's the strategy for killing it off. And I would just wonder what you feel that the board is active in that, and I wonder what your thoughts are.
I think there is a real desire to get upgraded equipment. There are procurements that are going on, you know, there are procurements that have really been upgrading of excellent new equipment that have come forward. But you know, you have to have money to do anything. And equipment is so expensive. And again, we get into that same fight. There are many people in Congress, aside from, you know, one of those members of Congress who stay on us about the menu and about the hamburgers and all of those things, but also they look at how the monies are allocated, and they have this feeling, the business mentality, that you only spend what you receive in terms of income. That does not work. And I'll have to say, the members of the board, the present board, realize it doesn't work. They accept the idea that it's not going to be able to operate at a profit or even equal. You're going to have $300 billion in deficit every year until there are many, many changes. But we have to just keep trying, and we have to try and stay on top of it. Yes?
George Chilson from San Diego. Thank you so much for giving your Saturday up to be with us this morning.
Well, I love that trip. Keeps me on driving.
It's wonderful to have somebody from the left coast on the board of Amtrak. Question to you is that in Amtrak's public communications, it is reinforcing all of the negative things about a national system. It portrays the Northeast Corridor as, quote, being profitable, which appeals, of course, to the most conservative elements. And separates out the Northeast Corridor as being, quote, viable, whereas the rest of the country is nothing but money-losing trains. And Amtrak itself, in its own communications, is making this point to the press. Is this something that Amtrak staff has done on its own? Is it Mr. Cush's position as chairman that this is how we're going to communicate it? Is it coming from the board? Is it coming from the staff? Is there anything that we can do to change it?
Well, it's pretty hard to hide. Every month the numbers go out. And the numbers are what they are. You know, it's not a matter, the numbers are not based upon commitment. It might be commitment in terms of future and meeting those. But all of the numbers are public and they go out in the press. And what the reality of what it shows is that you have some very profitable systems. And you have others, for here in California, it's profitable. State supported service is profitable. But that's not true in other places. It's not a matter of philosophy. It's a matter that we really have no choice but to release what are the actual numbers in the county, which always are not great.
Last 1 minute, Steve.
Just to follow on to what I'm Steve Roberts, I'm from Northern California. Just to follow up what George says, I think one of the big missing pieces in what you say is correct, but you've got the stovepipe between operating and capital.
Right.
And so in the terms of the long-distance trains and the short-distance trains outside the Northeast Corridor, it's all in one account, the operating account.
That's
The
right.
Northeast Corridor, you've got operating, where you have a positive cash flow. But in order to generate that operating, you have to spend about $300 million a year for a maintenance of way, which about equals the profits. And then on top of that, you've got longer-term capital needs, like the Portal Bridge and the tunnels and everything else. So what we're concerned about is when Amtrak puts out these profit numbers, they don't say, well, yes, in order to do that, we have to spend $300 million on maintenance of way expenses every year. So that's what our concern is that it's not apples and apples, it's apples and oranges.
And that's very true. And then we've had, Sandy, and then we just had an accident. I didn't indicate that in the federal legislation they increased the amount that people can be reimbursed from accidents to $295 and to $295 million over the $200 million, which was the cap, and it will be increased on every year based upon the increases in terms of cost of living. But what you're saying is very true. And also you have so many other companies that are working together. Now they're on the Northeast Corridor, they have a commission of those states working together, and now they are required to put in a portion of that capital money. Every project goes into that new commission, and the states will have to put in, and in line. The projects will be in line. The Portal Bridge, I just think it's very difficult to say that Portal Bridge will not be built. At some time, they keep putting it off. It's not being built, even though I understand they're going to make an agreement this year. They're making an agreement in this fiscal year for the Portal Bridge to be completed. But those tunnels, Chris Christie is still facing the fact that he stopped the tunnels. And the reality is that the people there are, I don't think that you have to be just committed to one thing or the other. There is no way that we're going to be able to say that Northeast Corridor is not able to utilize some of those monies that come in through to Northeast Corridor. What we're saying is there has to be also a commitment to the rest of the country. That there has to be in terms of when you're acquiring, whether or not it's maintenance, or if you're talking about acquiring locomotives, and we need to modernize. We need to get into approaches and to utilize electric and all of the other alternatives. I personally feel that the board is strongly committed nationwide. But if you, just like I say, accounting-wise, maybe the new accounting requirements will make it clear exactly how monies are allocated. So, we have to hope. And guarantee it, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
My name is John Rushton. As a frequent Amtrak rider, one of the things that's very noticeable over the years is the deterioration of track. One of the things that Amtrak required when it was railroad separated was that they maintain 79-mile-an-hour track, and if it's not being done, it doesn't seem like anyone is holding their feet to the fire very much on that.
Well, you know, we are in litigation with the freights because when we went through last year, the real on-time performance went down so much. It was not our Amtrak's responsibility or cause. It was the freights. And unfortunately, so much of that track we're sharing with some of the freights. And that is in litigation of where we're trying to get a better agreement that passenger, first of all, passenger rail has priority. Priority, and also there has to be the maintenance. But that is in litigation. I believe that that's one of those things I think that will win in that case. Thank you.
I've no doubt over her career, Ms. Burke has received a lot of presentations, a lot of plaques, but today she's getting the best one. The Rail Passenger Association of California commends the Honorable Yvonne Burke, Amtrak board member, county supervisor, and congresswoman for years of dedicated service to passenger rail and transit. There's a picture of Union Station, your home.
I worked on Gateway, you know, I was a private lawyer.
So thank you again, and thank you for your
Still happening.
Yeah, and there seems to be no regress.
Well, there is a lawsuit. Because they were affecting the on-time performance. Because and plus they have locked in, it's up to money. And maybe that's, you know, work out.
But also some of the public entities out there too, deliberately identify the Amtrak schedules.
Oh, really?
Oh, constantly. I want to mention
Okay.
So you're wrong.
oh, yeah. Boy, it's crack.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Okay, thanks again. Well, on with the program. We have, you know, we make no apology for our support for the long-distance trains, even though there are those that decry them as being old-fashioned, or dinosaur trains, or whatever, dino rail. You know, first of all, here in Southern California, actually Northern California as well, we really depend on the sort of whole nexus of scale with the regional and the corridor trains and the long-distance trains to provide adequate maintenance facilities and a crew base that can operate a successful system. If we lost the long-distance trains, the costs that would be dumped on the state trains would probably put them out of business quite rapidly. So we have consistently supported these trains, but also for their own sake, because they do provide useful transportation to a lot of people, as well as generating tourist revenue. So it's a very great pleasure. As you know, there have been some personnel changes in local Amtrak management in the last few months. And so it's with a very great pleasure, personal pleasure on my part, to welcome both Jay Fountain and Eric Smith, who are the new route managers for most of the long-distance trains that originate from Los Angeles. Jay has recently shifted from about 4 years of dedicated service on the Surfliners, and he is now responsible for the Sunset, the Heartland Flyer, and the Texas Eagle. And Eric somehow survived a spell as Amtrak's manager for Metrolink, and he is now route manager for the Coast Starlight and Southwest G. I'm leaving it to you guys who goes first, or whether you're going to tag team it, or whatever you're going to do. But welcome both of you, and thanks again for coming.
Don't get yourself fired for what you say here.
No, I'll try not to. First, I have to give you an apology here. You know, one of the things that Eric and I quickly found out about this job is that you have to travel a lot. We just came back from Chicago. And, you know, when you travel, I know many of you travel, staying in those dang hotels, you know, you're trying to get comfortable, you're not at home. And so last night, I went to bed. I wanted to get a good night's sleep because we were really excited about coming to this event. And I just laid down and was just about falling asleep when, you know, I heard the door handle rattling around, and I thought, what the heck, you know? And so I go and I open the door up. This guy standing there kind of got a red face, and he goes, "Oh, excuse me, buddy," and he stumbled off down the hallway. So I get back in bed, and I'm just about falling asleep, and I hear the door handle rattling around again. I go back, open the door, and this guy in a red face, he's there again, and he goes, "Oh, excuse me, buddy," and he stumbles off the hallway down the other way. So finally I fell asleep, and inexplicably, I couldn't believe it. I hear the door jamming again, and I go, what the heck? I yank the door open before I can say anything. This guy looks at me and goes, "Dang, buddy, how many rooms you got in this hotel?" So, you know, I'm a little tired here. First of all, I want to sincerely thank Paul and the RailPAC group and NARP and all the distinguished guests here today for this invitation to Amtrak, and to Eric and I to get up here and talk to you about the long-distance trains. Something that certainly we share in common. All of us in this room is a love for trains. We share that. That's why we're here today. Giving up your Saturday, your grandkids, whatever it may be. For me, I want to give you a little background. I mean, my grandpa worked for the Seaboard. Never really knew that I was going to grow up and work for the railroad. You know, I went to Florida State University, was going to be an attorney, ended up doing a little bar and a restaurant for a while. Due to a chance encounter at the cab stand in New Orleans, I ran into the head personnel guy there right after I sold my bar and restaurant. He says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I was in, had this little bar and restaurant." He says, "We're looking for people to run our dining cars." I said, "Dining cars?" And he pointed at the train. And that's how 40 years ago, this past summer, my railroad career started working at Amtrak as a dining car steward. I've worked as a chief, a train master, assistant soup on the Surfliners, and of course now I'm a route director for long distance trains. Big shoes to fill, taking over from my friend Eric, who's now the superintendent of Metrolink. You know, the people, I look back on my career, some people here kiss me that, due to always talking about the trains being dinosaurs, that they brought a dinosaur in like me to help run the trains, I have had a little experience out there. My first train that I worked was the Sunset Limited. I sat up almost all night one night talking to Hunter S. Thompson in one of our lounge cars. He loved traveling the trains, wrote about them in many books. I've been kissed goodbye by Drew Barrymore. We have a fabulous administrator that works for us up in the office, Renee. When I first came to this role, she said, I got to share a story with you. You don't remember this, but she said, years ago, I was a young mom traveling the train. You were walking through the train as a chief. She said, I was struggling trying to eat my dinner in the diner holding my baby. You said, let me give you some help. And so I took the baby from her and was trying to rock the baby, who promptly threw up all over my sports jacket. I was at our service excellence meeting in San Antonio last month,
And one of our great new managers, Greg, said, you never got my letter, did you? And I said, what letter's that? And he said, well, I used to travel the trains with you when I was a little kid, and as I got older, when I finally got old enough to hire in, I reached out to you, wrote you a letter, and I recalled you and said, would you help me get an interview? I did. He got hired. Well, I guess he wrote me a thank you letter that, shockingly, in the Amtrak bureaucracy, never got to me. I remember a young engineer down in San Diego, who used to be sitting there on his breaks, drawing these fabulous pictures. That's Eric Smith, my counterpart, someone that we share. I collaborate with on a lot of things. The other person that I met in my rail travels just walked back in the room. I met him in a chance encounter many years ago down in New Orleans when he was over the Crescent. And he stayed after me and said, I want you on my team. And some years ago, I agreed to do it, and it was a great decision. Mike Chandler, Deputy General Manager, who has been my mentor over all these years. Thank you, Mike. And last but not least, I will share with you that inexplicably, due to her mom asking me a trans question on a trip I wasn't even supposed to be on the Coast Starlight some years ago, this lady asked me some questions, and ultimately I started talking to her. Her daughter was riding with her, and that's how I met my wife 20 years ago on the train. So the train, I've been very, very blessed. It's been great to me and great to my family. You know, as I said, I started on the Sunset. I worked on the Coast Starlight. You know, the Pacific Surfliner the last few years had a phenomenal relationship with the Low Sand Group and all the different groups over there. And, you know, we'll still be working with them in some aspects of that train. So, what are we going to do on the Sunset Limited? Well, first of all, the best news is, and I'm here to tell you, is that UP Railroad had proposed a bus bridge. They're going to do some track work helped by Human. They wanted to bus bridge the Sunset from early January till sometime in March, all the way over. We would have had to bus bridge from Los Angeles to Tucson. I don't have to tell the men and women in this room what that would have done to our ridership. All I know is, you know, we talked about many times even on the Surfliner how it kills our ridership when we bus bridge. So I'm happy to say that just came back from Omaha. I met with UP Railroad. Our staff was in from Washington, and Tim Cooper, our superintendent, and we were able to broker a deal where we will not be bus bridging. So that's great news. One of the things that we are going to do to allow them extra time to work, and I actually think it has great potential, is the Sunset Limited in early January. I believe it's the 8th. I have to look at my calendar real quick. We'll start on a Friday night. We'll start the early schedule. It will leave at 4 p.m. from Los Angeles. I think that's a great thing. We're going to run it straight through. We're not going to hold it anywhere. We'll lose just a little time in San Antonio, but we'll actually arrive in New Orleans in the late afternoon as well, which I think is a real winner on that regard. So, you know, we'll take a close look at it, see how it works. Some of the other things we're looking at doing, you know, you have to figure out ways to bring some life back to these trains. I mean, you know, it's interesting. One of the things we heard this over Thanksgiving, is, well, I don't know about the ridership because, you know, those dang gas prices were so low. You know what, folks, I'm not buying that. I got to tell you why. In the 50s, my dad rode the train from Jacksonville, Florida, up to New York, paid right at $200 for a round-trip ticket. You know what gas price was then? 30 cents a gallon. So I'm not necessarily buying that. I think the challenge for us is, and I say us because I mean collectively, you know, support groups, is to figure out ways to get folks back on the train. One of the things we're looking at doing is doing some theme-type trips. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 6th most popular tourist attraction in San Diego. No, it's not the zoo or SeaWorld or the Midway. It happens to be Stone Brewery and Beer Gardens. They are the occult phenomenon in the microbrew business. They're the 800-pound gorilla of that business. And we're negotiating with the owner of Stone Brewery to do a theme trip on the coast. Excuse me, I never go with Eric's training. Actually, it will be on various trains. The first trip will be on the Sunset Limited. And it will run next fall. We're going to allow plenty of time to market this. They have a huge international following. And they are right now presently building a brewery and beer gardens in Berlin. So that, you know, that it's huge. And I think doing things like this, figuring out things, Greg's so excited about it, he wants to do either in New Orleans or LA a beer festival in conjunction with it. I mentioned to Paul recently, I'd really like to figure out a way to do a rail fan trip, you know, do something on the Sunset or on the Texas Eagle where we do something themed specifically at those men and women like you in this room that have done so much to keep our trains on the road. Because I can tell you, I may have hired in 40 years ago, but if it were not for the support of you and your peers, those that came before you, we wouldn't be here. Amtrak would not be here. Because every time, regardless of who the president was that was going to shut us down, you stood up, you wrote the letters, you made those phone calls, and we appreciate it. So I talked to Paul about that. He did mention, I have to be honest, he said, well, if you get that Sunset through Phoenix, he says, I'm sure we fill up several cars with that. We are talking about trying to bring the exhibition train back and do that on the Sunset route. On the Texas Eagle, I'm excited to tell you, we just finalized this yesterday, I believe. You know, track work last year really, you know, it really hurt us and all the weather disruptions and everything, and our ridership is down over on the Eagle. And so we have our Tempo team, they're the local group that we do our local revenue management over there. So a few weeks ago I asked them, I said, we got to do something right after the new year to jumpstart our ridership from St. Louis south. We have good ridership from Chicago to St. Louis. And I said, what would you think about a 2-for-1? And they said, well, I don't know if you're going to get corporate to let you do that. Well, we did. And we're going to, starting on January 5th through the middle of March, March 15th, we're going to have a 2-for-1 over on the Texas Eagle. Now, the reason we're doing that is so it gives us a vehicle. We're going to go out into the communities. We're going to send our employees out. We're going to go out. We're going to meet with the local chambers, the schools, the churches, or whatever. It's not just for that short-term ridership for just those few weeks. It's for the impact that will have on our long-term ridership. Because every family that comes out and takes advantage of this, they're going to go home and they're going to tell their family, their neighbors, their folks they go to church with or they shop with or whatever. I really think we can get some long-term growth out of this. I have to give so much credit to that Tempo group. I mean, Dr. Pollard and Griff Hubbard and Jesse Padilla, our district manager down there, they do a phenomenal job. And those of you that may not know, that train was going away. And the Tempo group saved the Texas Eagle. And they are the, you know, they revenue manage that train themselves and do a phenomenal job at it. And I feel very, very honored to be able to work with that group and, you know, keep the Texas Eagle, the fabulous train that it is through all those little communities. The Heartland Flyer, well, it is funded for another year. The state of Oklahoma did fund it, we're thrilled to say. And we're looking at options to try. Obviously, we've got to do some things to boost the ridership on the Heartland Flyer. Some of us feel that that may be tied to Thackerville and that casino there. We're going to take another look at that. But it's a great little connector train, a feeder train for the Texas Eagle. Those are the trains. Some of the things we're doing, it became apparent to me and to Eric when we first came to our roles, is that we needed to do some different things. a lot of folks travel all around. They don't just take one trip. They go from Eric's Coast Starlight to the Sunset or whatever. And so, you know, I thought we got to do some regional food. Not change every menu different, but at least some regional food. Well, our corporate people weren't thrilled at first, but we're pretty persistent about it. And so Eric's had a lot of success. He's going to talk about it, his meals out in the coaches. So I was able to talk them into doing red beans and rice. We hope to roll that out next month. It'll be a lunch special on both the Sunset Limited and the Texas Eagle. The great part about it is it will not only offer a regional choice, but then I'm going to utilize that same product as a coach meal to go at dinner time. So that single mom that's sitting there with 2 kids that maybe can't afford to come into the diner has a hot meal option that we can bring her something back in the coaches for her family, and I think it'll be real successful. We're looking at you know, doing a lot of things, working with marketing. You know, to get, there's so many, I mean, I listened to Ms. Burke and what a phenomenal champion she is for long distance train. I mean, I was really struck by her comments about, you know, Acela versus the rest of us. And I got to tell you something, unless I'm mistaken, those young men and women from Oklahoma or Texas and all those little towns, they don't have a problem with sending them off to fight for our liberty all over the world as we defend this great country. Those little towns are important, and Amtrak is a part of the fiber of that. We need to do everything we can to keep our national rail network, and we will continue to work with all these little towns to make sure that happens, looking for ways, creative partnership. I mean, I was thrilled to hear our boss, Mark Murphy, who has been here and I think met with you before, make the statement that he's tired of shutting down stations. He wants to figure out ways to keep them open, to work with the local communities, to partner, to, you know, make them centerpieces of their town. So I'm really excited about that. And one of the other things we're looking at is schools. University of Arizona, for example, 42,000 students. Almost 11%, or about 4,500 of them, are from Southern California. We're on a mission to see about getting them, you know, a better situation for them, better package, to get them on the train. There are a lot of schools out there like that, not just them, their parents. They want to go see them on the weekend, ride the Sunset over there. The secret to the success, well, I can tell you, and I said this to our star employees in San Antonio when I met with the groups from the Texas Eagle and the Sunset. The secret is really simple. In my career, every bit of success that our teams have had have been due to the men and women on the front line. Be they a conductor, a cook, a ticket agent. Those men and women on the front line, they are absolutely the secret to bringing people back. We're going to really put we're doing this ACE training, ACE customer service training, trying to, put a little more pizzazz into our customer service. I'm meeting with the employees. The employees come up with a lot of these great ideas. They came up with the red beans and rice. Initially, they said, hey, we need to do something. I really think that our service out there is huge. People will come back. One of the things I talked about, interestingly, that I want to share with you at UP, and a lot of people, let's face it, when you say UP Railroad, say, oh boy, they're a big bad wolf, they don't care. We had one of the best meetings last week with UP Railroad. I mean, it was phenomenal. And one of the things I put on the table, I was very honest with them. I said, look, we still got more track work to do. There was talk in the earlier by Ms. Burke, you've got to improve the ride quality. I said, why don't we partner together to do better communication and put out some posters, put out some flyers. We're working on the railroad. I have a picture of a conductor, a train, and a track worker out there. But we apologize for the inconvenience, but this is being done, for your safety, your ride comfort, and improved customer service. And UP, as their marketing department, is going to work with us, just like they're working with us on avoiding the bus bridge. So I'm cautiously optimistic that, you know, we're trying to broker a new day in our relationship with them. I mean, let's face it, we don't own any railroad out there. But, you know, when you get to most of the country, we have it in the Northeast Corridor and a few other parts, but for the most part, we are dependent on these host railroads. So we have got to broker a partnership with them. We've been successful with David's group and the Lothian group and doing the same thing with UP, with Metrolink, with BNSF, and with North County. We've got to do the same thing with our national network. Last but not least, I just want to tell you that, again, I can't say enough. When I hadn't been working on the Sunset Limited as a dining car steward for a few months when I was told, well, this train's going away. They're getting rid of it, you know. And I've heard that many, many times during my career. And again, I thank you for your organization's support for what we have out here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity of being here today. Appreciate it.
I'll keep it short. I've got an 87-slide PowerPoint that we could queue up. Boy, that was a long talk for a guy with a 3-day-a-week training. I'll give you just a little background on me. I was a little kid at Pasadena when the chief came to town. My grandparents would take me there several nights a week. We'd eat the salt shaker across the street, and very likely I probably went across the street at train time and saw Don Richardson take the chief through town. What an honor it is this many years later to say that's my train. That's our train. So that's for you, Grandpa. Thanks for taking me to Pasadena and Glendale too. Starlight was also part of that. When we wanted to change things up a little bit, we'd go to Glendale. So it's a lot of fun to be in this role now, thinking back all those years. Started many, many years ago as a coach cleaner at 8th Street Yard. Was cleaning the Starlight and became a carman apprentice after that. Worked as a carman for a few years. Went to Metrolink as a carman. Conductor, engineer. Got to be Don Richardson's conductor before he retired, and actually worked as a conductor and an engineer with Ben Wilder here as well. So a lot of good memories there. So it is an honor to be here today and speak to all of you folks. A lot of you are friends, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives on the Coast Starlight. We're working collaboratively with labor and management to solve a lot of the issues that we have customer service-wise. One of those big initiatives that started with Mike Dwyer before he retired was the Just For You meals, the coach meals that Jay mentioned. Jay is going to adopt that on the Sunset, as he mentioned, only over there. It's going to be called Just For Y'all. So you'll see a little bit of a different menu over there. But why this is working is it's an employee-created program. It didn't come from management. It didn't come from a cubicle back in Wilmington, Delaware, or Washington, D.C. It came from the employees that worked the Starlight. They created the menus, the chefs and the food specialists on board created the menus. We started off for dinner, we had a Salisbury steak, and for lunch we had a BLT, and that meal was prepared in the diner and then delivered by the coach attendant to the coaches for the passengers that chose that option. A lot of people just didn't want to go up to the dining car to either share the table with somebody else, or they were afraid that it might be too expensive. So it's a nice way to add additional revenue to the dining car without actually adding a lot of strain and stress to the dining car. Right now on the Coast Starlight, those Just For You meals are accounting for about 16% of the dining car sales, believe it or not. It's a nice option, a nice variable for them to have. So we're in the process of refreshing those meals right now. We're going to have a turkey club for lunch coming up soon, and I forget the dinner right now. I believe it's a chicken sandwich for dinner. So those are all items that were in the dining car and things that were taken from other items and changed into those specials created by the employees. So it's been a real big success. Since June, we've served over 9,000 of those Just For You meals on the Starlight. It was so successful on the Starlight that we did push it out to the Chief a little bit. It's still kind of in limited production on the Southwest Chief, but you're going to see more of that. I believe that the other long-distance trains will also be adopting that. The other big initiative on the Coast Starlight is business class on the Coast Starlight. How many of you have had the chance to take a ride in business class?
Can't get space.
What's that? You
Space.
can't get any space. Well, I'm working on that. I'm going to tell you how in just a second. So, how many people remember the arcade car from the Brian Rosenwald days?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, the 80s called and they took their video games back. That space was running around vacant for quite a while on the lower level of that car. Under Mike Dwyer's leadership, they initiated a program to restore the 12 seats to that lower level and marketed that as business class. Well, a lot of people were skeptical if that was going to work or not on a long-distance train. Well, it's working. It's working very well. I wish I could tell you how well it's working. Can you see the dollar signs in my eyeballs? People are willing to pay a little more for something exclusive or something just a step better. And I think it's something I'd like to go full car, hopefully within the next few months. We did go full car for Thanksgiving week. And again, they said, well, you're going to dilute your coach revenue. You're going to, we took a risk. It paid off a lot. One of the days during Thanksgiving week, those seats turned between LA and Seattle 4 times. And each one of those 4 times, they were paying just a little bit more. So we're very happy with the success there. What are the amenities on the business class card? Well, you get a $6 coupon for food and beverage, either in the dining car, the lounge car, or put towards the wine tasting in the parlor car. There was some confusion at first over parlor car access. I wish I could give parlor car access to everybody in business class. I just don't have the capacity there. So it's an invitation to the wine tasting event that's held in the parlor car. You can use your $6 coupon towards that. You get 2 bottles of water. You get free Wi-Fi. And so far it's working very well. We've had some complaints about the seat not being different enough from the regular coach seat. Did some looking around the country and I found that we do have a leather seat cushion in stock at various places around Amtrak. If you've ever ridden the Wolverine or some of the trains in the Midwest, the Horizon Dinettes that have the business class section, they have a red leather seat. Well, they're having trouble getting those on the Wolverine because they stole them all. So we got them in the lower levels of all the 5 Coast Starlight business class cars now, and we're working towards the full car, hopefully very, very soon. So, just make a quick look through my notes here to make sure that we're doing everything we're going to talk to you about. The parlor car. The parlor car is not going away. We headed into the holidays. We had an issue that we believed was grandfathered with the glazing on the lower level of the doors only. And the FRA took exception to that, and we agreed that we would correct that. And in return for agreeing to correct that, they agreed that we could run the car with the lower level closed off the holiday season. We've got material on order to fix that problem. The cars are not going away anytime soon. They will, however, just like last year, take a brief hiatus so that we can get them into the shops and get them into a cycle where we're not having to take them out of service during the busy summer months, and that we're doing all of that heavy 90-day inspection type stuff, the things that take a little more time than the overnight during that off-peak season between late January and early March. So the parlor car will be back in March, and I'm very proud to say. That's about all I have. I know Paul said we are running a little bit late, and I don't want to take up any more time than Jay already did, but as you can see, we work very well together. He steals all my ideas, and I steal all his ideas. So we're having a lot of fun in this new role, and I think we've got a great future ahead for long-distance trains on Amtrak. Thank you.
Listen, we are running a bit late and we are due to take a break. Don't rush off, you guys. If you can wait a few minutes. What I suggest is, I don't know, maybe 1 question. 2 questions, okay? 2 questions. And then also, during break, if you can hang around a little bit and then they can grab you and catch up with some commentators. I did promise Dave, I've got to get Dave out of here on time. So.
Okay, I'll make this quick. Jade for the Sunset Limited. As you know, those passengers that are in sleeping cars pay a hefty price. The question I have is, if that's the case, why do they have to get off so early when the train arrives into LA Union Station? originally stated that the passengers could stay until 6:30 in the morning. But now they're kicked off as soon as the train arrives, which sometimes I know has been 4:30. Do we deal with that situation?
Well, actually, we have reviewed it. They are staying on now till 5:30 in the morning. So they are being kicked off on train arrival, or they should be. And we did talk about that at the service excellence meeting. And it's still under review. The first class lounge, I believe, Mike, is opening at 5 o'clock. They arranged for that to open early. So the folks that do have connections do have an opportunity to go to the first class lounge. But, certainly it's still in the conversation, so I won't shut the door on that. Okay.
That's very important. The next question, if the train is going to be departing early now from Los Angeles due to the Union Pacific road work, what about the arrival portion? In other words,
It won't change number 1. It'll just change number 2's schedule. So number 1 will run on the same schedule, the westbound.
Okay.
Just be the eastbound.
George had a question. No, George, you've already had a question. Sorry. There'll be 2, and then that'll be it. Because
with the Southwest Chief, the elephant in the room, of course, is a 3-day-a-week schedule. And is there any progress being made with UP to make that daily? I'm sorry, at the Sunset, excuse me. The 3-day-a-week schedule. Any progress in the works to make that a daily train?
Well, regarding the Sunset and going daily, at this point, I think, Ms. Burke spoke to it, obviously we are equipment challenged. I think for that to happen, we would have to have additional equipment. I mean, having said that, behind the scenes there are, several long-distance options and initiatives that are being reviewed. I mean, you're preaching the choir with me. I mean, I've known since I started 40 years ago, it's not rocket science to know that if you can run, the more options you give people, the more riders that will come out. I'd love to see that happen at some point. So,
very quick.
Hi, thanks for your speeches, gentlemen. I like it. I'm wondering, in terms of what we've heard this morning, is the numbers and how to get ridership up. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned University of Arizona. One thing I'm concerned about is bicycle storage on train. And the Starlight, I had an opportunity to ride the Starlight up north. And it was a pain in the rear end to have to store a box somewhere and do everything. You have a bike car emerging on the East Coast, and I'm just wondering why you don't have a bike car here on every train in California, and having a consistent behavior. So you're talking about numbers that are present, but you're forgetting about the other sizable portion of members of people who don't even know the train exists, and we can help you spread that, especially since we work at universities. And so we're just wondering, what are you thinking in terms of changes along those lines?
The new baggage cars, the Starlight was one of the first Western trains to receive the new Viewlander-style baggage car. It's got several bike racks in there, so it's a possibility of eliminating the box and things like that so that you'd be able to get them on easily. So that would be a handoff to the conductor or the baggage person that was sending them. The Surfliner's been working on that pretty diligently for quite a while. In fact, you'll have a chance if you're around today, 573, 580, and 591, Los Angeles Rail or LA Rail private car operators, they're running their annual Pearl Harbor trip. There's a cabbage car on there. Some of you have seen it, the Amtrak Veterans Paint Scheme on the 90208, who we can thank Mr. Chandler for, by the way. A passing comment in Beach Grove led to a paint color choice. That has had added bicycle mounts as well. So we're very aware that it's a rising portion of the market, and we are increasing capacity wherever we can. You have anything, Jane?
Listen, you have the best. The questions go on, and they could do, but we really need to draw a line under it there. As I say, Let's give a big hand to Jane. Fighting for revenue, one passenger at a time, right? It is now, say, 10:50. Let's reconvene here at 11. Jay and Eric are kindly agreed to field more questions during the break for those of you who can grab them. Plenty of